We want people to hear and understand what happened to some of these folks, to certain people.
Oh my, Robert Morton.
Yes.
And was lynched for writing a note to a white woman.
Yes.
David Hunter was lynched in Lawrence County, South Carolina, for leaving the farm where he worked without permission.
Yeah. You start with them at eye
Well, that's Oprah Winfrey and attorney Bryan Stevenson last night on 60 Minutes, exploring a new tribute that honors thousands of victims of lynching. It is featured at Stevenson's new Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama. The memorial is accompanied by the Legacy Museum. It chronicles the eras of racial injustice. Stevenson labels from enslavement to mass incarceration. Both the memorial and the museum will open to the public on April 26th. Michelle Miller visited the museum and spoke with Stevenson and a man whose personal story is featured in the exhibit. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning. Well, Bryan Stevenson spent 16 years fighting to free Anthony Ray Hinton, who was on death row for nearly 3 decades for crimes he did not commit. Stevenson says that out of all of his clients, Hinton has inspired him the most. And in hopes of changing the fate of others, Hinton is sharing his account of nearly being executed.
Do you know when that day may have come?
It was coming soon. If God hadn't intervened and sent me his best lawyer, within 2 years, I would have gotten an execution date.
When I would get out of my car and start walking to the prison, guards would start pulling me aside. When are you going to get Ray out?
Really?
Oh, yeah. How can
Because
I
they
help?
believed he was innocent.
They believed he was innocent. They knew that he was innocent.
Despite his innocence, Anthony Ray Hinton lingered on death row for nearly 30 years.
They took off the white robe and put on the black robe.
He tells his story here at the Legacy Museum, created by his attorney, Bryan Stevenson.
I think the first-person perspective is key.
The museum chronicles racial injustice from enslavement to mass incarceration.
The theory behind this space is really the evolution of slavery. Slavery then becomes lynching, and lynching becomes codified segregation, and now we're in an era of mass incarceration where we're still indifferent to the plight of people of color.
No country incarcerates more people than the United States. Out of those on death row, 41% are black. The Equal Justice Initiative estimates that 1 out of 10 of those sentenced to death are innocent. It's a reality Hinton has experienced firsthand.
He said, there's 5 things that are going to convict you. Would you like to know what they are? I said, yes.
Hinton says those were the words of the detectives who arrested him when he was falsely identified for the murders of 2 fast food workers in 1985.
He said, number 1, you're black. Number 2, a white man is going to say you shot him. Whether you shot him or not, he said, believe me, I don't care. He said, number 3, you're going to have a white prosecutor. Number 4, you're going to have a white judge. And number 5, more than likely, you're going to have an all-white jury. He said, do you know what that spells? And he repeated the word conviction, 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 conviction.
Stevenson took on his case 15 years later, discovering a botched defense, mishandled evidence, and a refusal by Alabama's highest court to admit a mistake had been made in his trial. But in 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court recognized the injustice, ruling unanimously to exonerate Hinton.
30 years ago, the prosecution seemed deemed to take my life from me.
His story and others like it are the last stop on the museum's journey.
They just picked this phone up
Yes.
and they listened to his story. Why was it so important that Anthony Ray Hinton's story be part of this museum?
Because you can't understand this history without understanding what we were doing to people like Anthony Ray Hinton. If we had confronted the legacy of slavery, if we had confronted the ideology of white supremacy and the narrative of racial difference at the end of the Civil War, Anthony Ray Hinton wouldn't have ended up on death row. If we had put down the signs that said segregation forever, not just in our minds, but in our hearts, we wouldn't have put that man on death row for 30 years. But because we didn't, we have a system of justice now where there are thousands of Anthony Ray Hintons still languishing in jails and prison.
There are nearly 3,000 people currently on death row. Hinton lists each by name at the end of his new memoir, The Sun Does Shine. He knows not all of them are innocent, but says they all deserve humanity.
I want people to realize that we can teach hate, but we also can teach love. And so, as I look around this museum, I see lynching a man that was lynched for nothing but the color of their skin. It's sad, but they died for a reason. And sometimes, some of us have to pay a bigger price than others. And if that price for me to spend 30 years in that 5x7 pure hell every day, so be it.
Hinton sat down with Scott Pelley back in 2016 following his release, and he told him that he had not received any compensation or even an apology from the state of Alabama. He informed us that now, 3 years after his release, he still hasn't received any money or an apology. Hinton's book, The Sun Does Shine: How I Found Life and Freedom on Death Row, is available now where books are sold.
That's disgraceful that he's received no compensation. I just started reading that book over the weekend. Not only that, he passed a polygraph test, as you know, and his supervisor at the time said that he clocked in, that he was there on the job, and he still was convicted.
It is a process and pattern, he says, and Bryan Stevenson says, that happens to so many people. They just get railroaded. So the question is, how do you change the criminal justice system? In particular, 1 out of 10 people are deemed innocent, at least by EGI. And how do you have a death penalty when you know that innocent people are on death row?
Mr. Hinton's an amazing man. It's an amazing story.
3 decades stolen from an innocent man.
Yes. But what he said, you can teach people to hate, you can also teach people to love.
And that's his point.
And the price that he paid for that.
And he is helping people, and he really wants to get back to prison
amazing.
to help other people.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle.
It's a good book. Thank you, Michelle.